Funny enough, Stage Zero actually started about 100 miles out east. I was living in a town called Athens. I had a professional life before all this. I was in sales, I was in storm restoration, I specialized in commercial storm restoration and insurance mitigation. I was an adjuster for quite a number of years. I did this for like 10 years, right? 2020 comes around, 2021. I'm one of those people that gets COVID and it just completely like messes my whole system up. My career of climbing buildings comes to a screeching halt. I become a liability to my company. Everything I've done so far, I managed to buy myself a couple houses. I was married. I had everything kind of set. I was thinking about the next 10 years and then, everything kind of just came to a halt. I was in a hospital a lot and the recovery was slow. I was bedbound and I had nothing to do. So the only thing I had was a fucking M5. That was stage 2, fucking full dine-in, stage 2 M5 that I had gotten. At the time, all I can do was sit. So I said, well, let me go out there. So I started going out there and I started street racing. I started racing out there for money because, I didn't have anything else to do. I posted those to Builds versus Builds, if you guys are familiar with that. OG Builds versus Builds, shout out. From there, I got called out a couple more times. That kind of got me popular. I started hosting. I started hosting races. I started hosting meets. Meets started growing. I remember when I used to be hyped when 8 cars would show up behind a fucking car wash, and I would just be so excited, And at that time, it was crazy, but I saw the potential then. And I was just excited, So my health started improving slowly. I started kind of being able to function a little bit more. I started hosting events, I had a mindset about business, so I just incorporated that, except this time I was passionate. My meets in public were getting too big, 300, 400, 500 cars. We pulled permits, we hired security, we dealt with property owners, we dealt with, local police department, Richardson, Plano, shout out to those guys. They didn't give me ever a hard time. They were actually really chill. But we outgrew it. We couldn't do it. There were other hosts that were coming in and using our locations when we weren't there. We were getting blamed for things that we had no control of. So our next possible step was to find private venues. During this time, I was approached by a gentleman who was hosting an event at a drag strip I'd never been at before. It was very infamous at the time. I was warned about it, actually. And at the time I was like, yeah, hey, I'll take whatever I can get. I was hungry and I just was up for it all. So we went there. That event actually ended up being a huge flop. But the promoter wasn't even there. The guy wasn't even there. It was wild. But so the responsibility fell on me because I was co-host and I was the only one there that had some direction or game plan. I ended up meeting the track director at the time. I explained who I was, what I was doing, what my purpose was. I showed her some of the content I had out in public. I had some decent numbers at the time, so I wasn't just full of it. They gave me an opportunity to come back and work an event alongside the track manager as partner. And that's, at the time, she was Spareparts Entertainment. She had her own side business. And Stage Zero was already growing. We hit it really well in Dallas. And so we started hosting there. We started hosting at Yellobelly. In a sense of what I did differently, I think, it was a track that for one reason or another was in decline. And the issue wasn't in its diehard fan base, because that existed and that was there, but it wasn't very many. What I felt like the track, or what most tracks need to do nowadays, is reach out to a demographic that is new, that is oncoming. Tracks are getting shut down left and right. Every time I've gone to a track event, it's always these, which is really cool. It's always these really high power vehicles, $100,000 builds, which is awesome, and the spectators are awesome, but it's not inclusive. You see, this is a local track. Yellowbelly is a local track. It has a history. And I feel like the only thing, it just didn't hit the target right with the current demographic and the current generation. And I felt like if you can bridge the gap between an old track like that in a new, younger, enthusiastic and passionate generation that magic would happen. And that was my vision. The gate staff, the security, the track pep, the concessions, you know, everybody there was pretty great overall. Now, the operations as far as hosting events there, working with the owners, was dysfunctional, to say the least. There was definitely a little bit more personality involved in business, but I think that's what kind of makes the magic of what Yellobelly is. It was difficult because we had a lot of opposition. We had racers that were fed up with things we had no control over that were prior to us. We had other hosts that, you know, were starting to badmouth us. You know, there were people that I was very clear with who I would work with and who I would not work with, and that didn't go over with the people I would not work with. We had owners that once they were comfortable with us enough on a regular basis, they took comfortability as a means to push boundaries. So they started trying to manipulate our numbers, our percentages. You know, in the beginning we were all on contract, everything was clear and cut. You know, that's the world I come from, and that's what I understood. You know, we had an agreement. There were constantly day-to-day disputes on that agreement, even though it was said and it was written on and we signed it. And, you know, there were still disputes, you know, coming from the top saying, no, we're going to give you something different now, or we're changing this now and you can't do nothing about it. And you know, all this we kind of have recorded and everyone there kind of knows it. But, you know, I mean, there was a lot of day-to-day nonsense that I don't think people were aware of. No, we definitely took our L's, man. You know, we've taken losses for sure. We've had events at different tracks while simultaneously getting hit by bad weather. We've had bad weather come at us. We weren't able, you know, we were pressured to take certain days on the calendar and we weren't able to change it. So we were kind of pressured to keep things going when we should have rescheduled several times. So, I mean, we've taken some losses, but that kind of comes, you know, expected. But we did so graciously. You know, all of our media, our staff, everybody got paid out. You know, at the time of our losses, we had some wins before then, so we were able to kind of take the losses and not drown in it. But we were able to bounce back. But no, there were definitely some nights where I'm telling you, I think we had, you know, one event we had like 80 people. And I had hired like 3-4 media and I had put out marketing and flyers and ads. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to drown. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay all these people? You know, luckily enough, you know, this is a really, really awesome community. And we have had media work with us for months at the time. And, you know, when we took a hit, some of them, you know, they looked at us and they're like, hey, look, you know, get us next time. You know, and needless to say, those guys have stuck with us ever since. But you know, we've managed to keep everybody else happy to everything that we've agreed to. We've managed to make good on everything that we've said that we would do. And despite our losses, I think we've never put the burden of our losses on anyone else. You know, there's a matter of opinion and then there's a matter of fact. Now, if you can show me something where I agreed to pay a certain amount and I didn't do so, and you can prove that, by all means, you know, show me that, and I'll make right on it. But I've never allowed something like that to happen. You know, I've never gone beyond my means. Like I've said, I've taken losses, and I know what I can handle. And sometimes, you know, I get complaints from not hiring certain people when I've already have certain people. And that's because I'm trying to cover a situation from occurring. But I don't think any of that is actually out there. I think a lot of it is opinion, and I think a lot of it is entitlement. You know, we do pay promoters, we do pay influencers, we work very closely with DFW Ghost Rider for our bike wars and J rides. And those are two very, very awesome people. They've helped us out when we were promoting charities. They've come out to our events when we were basically nobody. And not to say that we're anybody now, but they've just been really great human beings, and they've really supported what we were doing. So I mean, as far as claims like that go, I'm really not going to entertain it unless it's valid, and that's as far as I'm going to go with that. The leaving situation with Yellowbelly, no, I was not arrested. No, I was not trespassed. There was a private family matter that was occurring between the family. In retaliation, one of the family members had called the police and asked them to tell me to leave in retaliation. The day I was there, I was in the car the entire time. I was working on my phone. I hadn't stepped out or said a word to anybody. Obviously, the family was arguing. If you're familiar with Yellowbelly, that's nothing new. I'm on camera in the car. The police were there dealing with the family that was arguing. And I was in my own world doing my own thing. I really wasn't involved until they started pointing at me and trying to use me as, I don't know what. The police came up to me. They asked me, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "Oh, the family's arguing. It's nothing new, but it's nothing to do with me. I've been in here the whole time, sitting in this car, working, and and now I'm being bothered." So anyways, they had tried to flip that and make it look like it was all about me when it wasn't. It really had nothing much to do with me. The police had asked me just to leave and let the family cool off and let them sort it out. Easton told me to come back, just let them cool off. The next day, I had my last Mopar standing event. This was the very next day. So I'm like, great. We had Fast Act Friday that night. which still went on. We still paid out, everybody that night got paid. The money was handed out. It was still a successful night. The next day we had Last Mopar standing, and now we just had this fiasco with the family and then roping me into it. I had still come out. One of the owners had told me, "Look, just come out. Things will pan out. Everybody will cool off in a week. Just come out. Have Emily run it while you're just taking a break." And I'm just like, no, I'm not going back. I'm not going to be treated like this. This was not the first instance where something like this has happened. This has been like maybe the 12th instance. I mean, I've had walkie-talkies thrown at me. I've been cursed out. I've been, gotten in my face. It's just forget. I've had bottles thrown at me. It just goes on and on and on. The reason why I tolerated it was because my vision was set, down the road. I was thinking about growing Stage Zero. I was thinking about what I was doing to the community. I was thinking about the people that send me DMs telling me how cool the event was and how happy they were. They're giving me ideas. I incorporate some of those ideas. They're ecstatic. I played a lot off of the community. So that kind of outweighed, for me personally, emotionally, mentally, that outweighed the bullshit. But I came from a lot of bullshit, growing up. I'm from New York City. I came from a lot of crap, and that didn't really scare me. The only thing I just didn't mess around with is when it came to what we agreed upon and what was actually executed. So between that, there was discretions and there was issues. But besides that, I mean, my goal and my intention was never to stay there. It was too chaotic. I knew that I would go down with them if I stayed there. So my goal was always to move on. Eventually, I'd like to host different events, different cities, different states. I'd like to travel with it. I'd like to continue making racing and trophies and prize money for racers and street racers a feasible thing for a large portion of the street racing community and not just the 1%. And so we're running with that, and everyone seems to enjoy it. The future. Well, unfortunately, circumstances and situations at Yellowbelly have kind of not been in sync with our direction moving forward. There's a bit of hostility there. It's getting a bit crowded. I completely understand and respect Yellowbelly as a business venturing out and taking on new promoters and hosting new events. I respect that from a business standpoint. I appreciate them for what they've done, bringing me in, allowing me to host my events there, doing business with me. In the beginning was definitely very vital to my operation and to what I was doing. The future of Stage Zero, we are branching out. Our Fat Stack Friday events, we are still moving forward with that. We are still hosting weekly events where we're giving out money to racers and street cars alike. We are now hosting at XRP. If you guys are familiar, it's a track in Ferris. Yeah, it's about the same distance from Dallas as Yellowbelly is. It's in the same vicinity, it's just south. And we're really excited to announce that we're hosting Mega Meet 2.0 there November 14th. If you want to check out texasmegameet.com, we're now accepting sponsors and collaborators. We have some really fair packages. Sponsors, this is really about the community. We bring in every major car group, every minor car group, every business that's in the automotive industry that'd like to be a part of it. I think the first Mega Meet, we had rented out Yellowbelly, or we had brought in, I think, over 200 people in for free through the gate. So this is very community orientated. We have several sponsors that we're working with, and so we're projecting a very large turnout. For the first one, funny enough, it was like 28 degrees, it was freezing, and we still had about 1,800 people pull out. So, and this was when we were very, very early on. We had seen the potential in this and the community's want for this as well. So we had started a little bit early on planning the second Mega Meet. And we're currently now in our green light phase, and we're accepting sponsors, and we are projecting maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people, maybe 10.
I am the daughter of the owner, and I started out there as a cashier doing concessions work. Throughout the past 10 years, I've grown my career. I worked my way up in concessions to lead cashier, all the way to food safety management, which I got certified in. From there, I kind of got bored, kind of mundane. The next step up there that I got moved to and promoted to was operations management at Yellowbelly Drag Strip. So a lot of the changes and things that have been initiated out there, I've been kind of in the background pushing for them. I'm one of the first people in the past couple generations that actually has a true passion about car culture and the community and the people that I'm working with. On the back end, a lot of people would think I'm kind of prioritized or given special privileges, but the fact is, at the end of the day, I'm not. Sadly to say, it's been more so difficult working with family because they have a belief that, because you're family, you should settle for less. Okay, so I haven't stolen Yellowbelly's Instagram. The fact is, from the beginning of the Yellowbelly's Instagram, I built it. Y'all can scroll all the way back to the beginning, the very first posts and lives and media feeds and streaming, that was me. I've been in the background growing their company and supporting them for a little over a year now. They're under the impression that they're the owners of that account just because of the track name. We originally had it set up as Yellowbelly DS, and nobody ever really asked what the DS stood for. And they had every opportunity to start their own Yellowbelly Instagram. I told them they should definitely start it with Yellowbelly Drag Strip Corp, or something to follow their Facebook. The new promoters that the tracks decided to work with, there's been kind of a change in environment out there. I'm not going to say names, but, a lot of hearsays come down the line, and the owners have chosen to believe it and kind of come at us for it. And we're not here for the drama. We're here, for the community and the culture. Jealousy. If anything, yeah, both the owners spent their whole lives out there. They grew up out there, and they feel like they are owed something at this point because of the amount of time that they've had. But as far as that goes, you know, we did actually get one contract. We did get a contract with Easton because we were worried about issues moving forward, just because of, you know, circumstances and problems we've had in the past working with them. So we did get our first contract, but the minute our last date that we had put on that contract expired, things kind of escalated. Well, our events grew, and our backing grew, and we started bringing on bigger names. And they recognized us. Yeah, they recognized us. You know, the first couple ones that we started bringing in these really big crowds out. You know, they were like, yeah, you're doing great, you're doing great. And you know, the time came where we were like, okay, well, hang on, like, let's get this written down. Let's make sure we're moving forward professionally about this. It was a big no. He wants everything to be Yellobelly branded. He doesn't necessarily want anybody's like event names or their concepts or their company to get the credit that's due to them for what they're bringing to Yellobelly. But more so, it's always been on their end. Who owns the business? It's mine, or it's mine, and I was never there for that. You know, I don't really care who owns the company. At the end of the day, you know, we're trying to like grow drag racing culture. We're trying to grow community and the way people see things.